Hi everyone, welcome to another video from Crafty Terrain. My name's Lee and today we're going to be looking at everything you're going to need to get started painting miniatures. Let's take a look.
Okay guys, so let's take a look at brushes, okay? So these are pretty good for a base level brush. These are Army Painter's brushes. This one is the Regiment brush, and as you can see the tip on it isn't too big. It's an okay tip with a decent point. It's not all about brush size, okay? So people when they get into miniature painting think it's about having the smallest brush possible because you've got to paint all the small areas. It's not. The actual key to the brush is how sharp the tip is on the brush, okay? You actually want a brush that has a fairly decent size head, so it actually holds paint, okay? If the brush is too thin, the paint will dry very, very quickly on the brush and you don't get much working time on the model. So that's a Regiment brush from Army Painter, and that would be a good place to start. Then if we take a look at another brush from Army Painter, this is the Monster size brush. Again, it's a bit thicker, and this is what I would do the bulk of my painting with, all panelled areas, cloth, things like that. And then I would switch to the Regiment brush to do the finer details, probably on the face and around weapons and things like that. You're also probably going to need a dry brush, okay? Dry brushing is a technique where, you know, to pick out raised areas, and you can find many videos on YouTube of how to dry brush, but you have a different shaped brush, and it's where you have only a light bit of paint on the brush and you catch just the surface areas of the model, and that's designed like that. I would recommend picking up one of them. Also, I've just recently purchased some higher end brushes and I'm looking forward to trying these out. But these brushes are the Raphael 8404 range, and this is a size 2. If you can see the tip on this brush there, it's very sharp. You could do most of your model with this brush from large areas, including the detail, without having to swap brush out. I picked this brush up for around £12, so that's a little bit more of an expensive brush, but if you're just starting out, you probably don't need this brush. Okay, you're also going to need something to hold your water. I'll just use an old jar like so and fill it up to halfway to wash my brushes out in between each colours that you switch to. If you don't have a jar, you could use an old cup, a beaker, a glass, anything really that'll hold water. I found I wanted something that was quite thick so it wasn't easily knocked over on the table. That would be one bit of advice I would give. Remember to keep your water clean. You don't need to swap out between every colour that you use, but I would normally swap from dark to light colours depending on the colour of my water in the jar that's left. There is one thing to remember: if you've ever washed metallic off your brush into your jar, make sure that you change the water before you mix a new paint, okay? Because the metallic pigments will stay in your water, and then when you take water to mix to a normal colour, you'll end up with metallic mixture. So always wash the water out after metallics. You'll also need some paper towel just to wipe your brushes after you've washed them, so there's too much water on them, or if you're cleaning off paint, or if you're dry brushing. So just standard kitchen roll is fine. Toilet paper, you will also do the job, but you'll need some paper at your painting station. Okay, you'll also need something to mix your paints on. So what I have here is a homemade wet palette. Okay, wet palettes are great for beginner painters because it helps keep your paints thin. A very common mistake is paints are too thick when you start out. You don't put enough water in and you lose the detail on the model. The way a wet palette works is you would soak this underlayer, cloth, flannel, paper towel, whatever you're going to be using, and place it into a tray. I'll just use a baking tin that I got out the cupboard. No one's ever missed it. The wife's never asked me where it's gone, so it's not cost me a penny. You saturate the towel and that will hold the water. You will then need baking paper or parchment paper. You cut it to a size that will fit and place on top once your water's in, and allow the water to soak through and saturate this. You then mix your paints on top of the baking paper, and they will stay nice and wet and they won't dry out because the water comes through the paper and it holds it in a nice layer. It's a brilliant technique to use. It helps keep your paints thin, as I already said, and I'll find it improved my painting to a better standard. If you don't have all this, it's not a problem. I originally started out using a ceramic tile because it easily washes clean with hot water. If not, you could use a plate, or you could use a plastic palette if you have one. Whatever you've got really to mix paint on, just make sure that your paints are not too thick, but I would definitely recommend a wet palette. If you want to spend a bit of money, then you can actually buy ready-made wet palettes, and they come with everything that you need, and they also have a lid. If you have one with a lid, the good thing about that is when you finish painting, you pop the lid on, none of the water evaporates, you come back the next day, you take the lid off, your paints are still wet, and you can pick off from where you was last with the miniature. I don't tend to do that. What I find is if I'm going to take a break from painting and I've just got an open palette like this, I'll just get some cling film, place it over the top. I can return a couple of hours later and my paints will still be wet and ready to use.
Okay, two more things I want to talk about is where you actually paint in the house or where you are living. So not everybody has access to a paint station or a studio or anything like that. What I personally do is I like to paint in where all the family are, so I get interaction and can talk. So I just use an old bath towel and I just paint at my dining room table, cover the table to protect the table. Then when I'm finished, I pack up, fold my towel away, and everything's as good as new underneath, no damage, no paint spills or anything like that. That is an option if you're just starting out because you don't have loads of money to spend to buy a desk or anything like that. Another option would be to buy a cutting mat. You can place your cutting mat down and work upon the cutting mat, or you can buy these wooden stations that hold your paints and stuff like that, and you can look like a tray and you can pick them up and take them off the table and store them away. But me personally, I place a towel down and I still just paint at my dining room table. One more thing to think about is lighting when you paint, okay? So wherever your table is, if you're ideally next to a power supply, that's great. If not, then you might need an extension lead. And then I just simply use a desk lamp, like so, and I place it on my desk, and then just angle the light over the top so I get good lighting when I'm painting without any shadows, so I can see all the detail and I'm when I'm picking out on the model. The desk lamps are not too expensive, you can pick them up for under £10. Okay guys, that brings us to the end of the video of what you're going to need when you're starting out painting. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, leave us a like. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more videos and click the bell for notifications. Hope you have a great day.